tonight. The push for peace talks amid the Mideast truce.
Engaging both sides so that Israelis and Palestinians can live with equal measures of security, of peace.
The Secretary of State heads to the region, devastated by conflict. Plus,
people coming from anti-Semitic groups calling for a second Holocaust, people making threats upon us personally.
A targeted attack on one of Facebook's largest groups dedicated to praying for the peace of Israel. And how going meatless could save your wallet and your waistline. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Hope for prolonged peace with a Middle East ceasefire. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Bratter. Thank you for joining us. Well, President Biden is sending in reinforcements. Secretary of State Antony Blinken heading to the Middle East to make sure the truce brokered between Israel and Hamas holds.
Despite a few incidents on the ground so far, it seems it has. CBN White House correspondent Eric Phillips joins us with tonight's top story. Eric, what is Secretary Blinken hoping to accomplish during his visit?
Well, John and Jenna, Blinken will have two goals, according to the White House. First, to maintain a sustained ceasefire, and then two, to chart a path to rebuilding Gaza. I spoke to one Israeli mother who wishes her son was being considered in all of this. Celebration throughout Israel and Gaza as people on both sides welcomed the ceasefire. Secretary of State Antony Blinken underscoring the administration remains committed to a two-state solution as the only way peace will endure.
Ultimately, it is the only way to ensure Israel's future as a Jewish and democratic state, and of course the only way to give the Palestinians the state to which they're entitled.
Over the weekend, Israeli tanks taken away from the Gaza Strip following 11 days of conflict that killed hundreds, most of them Palestinians. As Hamas rockets paralyzed Israeli cities, Israel responded with firepower, destroying much of Gaza's infrastructure, leaving almost 40% of the city without clean drinking water. The U.S. committing to help Gaza rebuild.
We know that won't be easy, in part because we want to prevent funding from going to Hamas. We obviously don't communicate directly with Hamas, given they're a terrorist organization.
I'm a mother. I'm a mother that wants to bring my son home.
Leah Golden's son Hadar was an Israeli soldier killed 7 years ago by Hamas, a violation at the time of a ceasefire brokered by the U.S. Hamas has still not returned the remains of her son or others for proper burial.
And this should be put now on the agenda of the ceasefire. I feel that Americans, oh my boy, because they brokered this ceasefire and they were the guarantees of this ceasefire. So going to a new one, you cannot do the same thing. It will be the wrong thing to do because it will institutionalize a new format of a ceasefire where you agree that the terror kills and kidnaps our soldiers. And this is wrong.
Secretary of State Blinken is expected to be in the Middle East for the next several days, meeting with both Israeli and Palestinian leaders, a much higher profile approach than the quiet diplomacy that led to this latest break in violence. Jenna and John.
All right, thank you, Eric. For more now, we turn to Michael Hanlon, Senior Fellow and Director of Research at the Brookings Institution. Michael, welcome back. We've seen over the years lots of different secretaries of state under different administrations wade into the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Michael, how important is this trip for Secretary Blinken, and what are you watching for?
Well, you said it right. I mean, going back to Condi Rice when she was Secretary of State under George Bush, there's been and really to the latter Clinton years, when they, had some initial success in the first term, but then ran out of gas in the second term, there's been 25 straight years of frustration in the United States, very bipartisan, every president essentially, to the point where, to me, the telling case is Barack Obama in his second term basically said, listen, I've already tried Secretary Kerry, if you want to go give it a try, good luck to you. But I'm not going to spend a lot of Oval Office time or my presidential time and prestige on this. And I think that's the basic situation. Now, Secretary Blinken, God bless him, is going to give it a try. And I don't know if he's really serious about thinking a two-state solution is a attainable prospect. Most people today would say no, the parties just aren't really ready to negotiate on either side. But, early in any new presidency, it typically is inevitable that people will at least explore the opportunity. I would be content just to see the ceasefire hold. I think that's a realistic standard for success under these circumstances.
And rebuilding in the United States is helping Gaza rebuild. Jen Psaki said they want to make sure that none of this funding goes to Hamas. But, Michael, is that possible? And what message does this potentially send to Israel?
That's a tough one, as you're implying, because Hamas essentially rules Gaza. So how do you rebuild Gaza and not have it benefit Hamas? I think that what you try to do, obviously, is make sure you're not funneling money directly through the top Hamas leadership, not strengthening them as power brokers or money dispensers within their own population. But if you help the Gaza Strip rebuild, you're going to inevitably help the government there, and that's Hamas. So I think what you're seeing here is a more nuanced, limited aspiration to at least not specifically empower the individual leaders of Hamas. But I think we have to live with the possibility that, that Hamas is going to, at least in some general sense, benefit if their people also benefit. I think the real question here is, can Israel put military pressure on the Hamas leadership and also reduce the ability to rearm? Those are tough chores, which means that in the end, getting back to a negotiation for a two-state solution is really the only game in town. But I just don't see that happening anytime soon.
Michael, there's reporting that Iran tried to take some credit for the attacks on Israel. Israel said it does not have any intelligence of that sort. Still, Iran does help to back and supply Hamas. How much does that complicate things as the United States looks to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal?
Well, again, you've put your finger on it, because this is the essence of the conundrum. As you know, there's a number of objections to the Iran nuclear deal, and I'm 50-50. So just so you know, I see the objections as well as the arguments for. But one argument against the Iran nuclear deal is it didn't have a long-term time horizon, even on the nuclear stipulations. But the other big argument against it is that it did nothing to prevent Iran from doing what it might want to do in Syria or Yemen, or even here in the case of Gaza or with Hezbollah in Lebanon. There are no restrictions placed on Iran. And so that really just feeds into the basic debate. I think, this has become a Rorschach test for where you come down politically. If you think that it's okay to do a specific deal on the nukes with Iran and then try to deal with the other issues separately, then you're supporting the Democratic approach. If you feel like the whole thing has to be wrapped together, then you're supporting a Republican approach. So far, neither approach has worked. So I wish everybody good luck.
All right, Michael O'Hanlon with the Brookings Institution. We always appreciate your insights. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much.
Well, as violence overtook the Middle East last week, a battle of a different kind was playing out online. It was an anti-Semitic attack against one of the largest Christian pages on Facebook that brought millions of Christians together to pray for Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports.
The Jerusalem Prayer Team, established nearly 20 years ago, with a reported nearly 77 million followers on Facebook, saw it suddenly shut down. Mike Evans tells CBN News an anti-Semitic campaign of hate targeted the Facebook page.
An organized Islamic campaign coming out of Pakistan, Indonesia, and Turkey targeted our site with over 1 million comments. So Facebook, rather than contact Bible believers and find out the truth, they responded to radical Islamic 911 would-bes and pulled us down.
The cyber campaign happened in the middle of the team's prayer time during the conflict between Hamas and Israel.
We've been praying for peace. We've been praying for God to protect Israel. We've been praying for peace in Jerusalem. We've been praying for blessing over the Jewish people, protection over the Jewish people. We've been praying for protection over Arab Israelis.
The attack campaign was twofold. First came the negative Facebook comments.
People coming from anti-Semitic groups calling for a second Holocaust, people attacking us personally, people making threats upon us personally.
Second, the hackers spread a false narrative that Facebook created the page during the conflict and then had people like the page without their consent. Dozens of videos with thousands of views across social platforms celebrated the news that the prayer team's page was down. Al Jazeera also reported on the situation.
I'm incredibly disappointed right now, basically, that instead of these anti-Semitic people who are attacking Christians for praying for peace in Jerusalem, for praying for peace, an end of the bloodshed, and instead of stopping those anti-Semitic attacks against us, Facebook has shut our page down.
The Jerusalem prayer team is appealing the decision, and Evans has enlisted the help of U.S. and Israeli leaders. CBN News reached out to Facebook, and they provided us with this statement. We removed Jerusalem Prayer Team's Facebook page for violating our rules against spam and inauthentic behavior.
My prayer right now is that Facebook would start to act with, hopefully, integrity on the situation and restore our prayers. You know, in this era, the fact that your prayers could be canceled on the internet is an unimaginable thing.
Evans came to Israel to report from the front lines of the conflict as part of a television special that includes many Christian leaders.
But it's to bring solidarity for the state of Israel and to oppose the lies to the evangelicals of the world.
Evans sees the special as an effort to win the media war and counter what he says is the mainstream media believing the lies of radical Islam. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thank you, Chris. President Biden's deadline for a deal on infrastructure is ticking away. Is there room for compromise? When Faith Nation returns.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. The hope of coming to a compromise on an infrastructure plan is fading. Senators here in Washington, D.C. have a few more days to iron out a deal before they leave for their Memorial Day recess. The White House now did on Friday put a pitch to a lower cost plan to Republicans, putting the new total at $1.7 trillion. But many in the GOP say Biden's plan is still too broad in scope.
That there's some fundamental difference here, and at the heart of the negotiations is defining the scope of the bill. What is infrastructure? We Republicans tend to define the infrastructure in terms of roads, bridges, seaports, and airports, and broadband. The Democratic definition seems to include social programs.
Today, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg told CNN the two sides have moved closer together, but there is still a lot of daylight between them.
And here now for more, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, you know, the president is now at $1.7 trillion, down from about $2 trillion. Is that going to be enough for Republicans?
No, it won't. This will not stand the way it is now. You know, I'm not feeling good about this at all. But I got to tell you, there's just, at this point, I don't see this happening. And here's why, because Democrats know that they can go this alone. They can go the budget reconciliation route. So that's their out. So they're in the driver's seat here. And so they're waiting for Republicans to come along with their offer the way Democrats see it, where the White House sees it. They've come down, whatever it is. I've lost all track, $500 million. I mean, when it gets to these numbers, I lose track. So they figure, hey, we'll just wait until Republicans agree to what we've decided to come up with. And Republicans aren't going to buy it. It's too broad. There's too much in there that isn't traditional infrastructure, as Susan Collins was saying. That's the real sticking point. We haven't even gotten to the fact of how much it's going to cost in terms of how to pay for it. And that's another sticking point. There's so many sticking points. It's very sticky.
David, you mentioned Democrats possibly going at it alone, and that may have something to do with public polling on all of this. The argument, though, on the Republican side is that so much of this bill has nothing to do with what people traditionally think of as infrastructure, roads, bridges, and tunnels. Why isn't that resonating with average Americans, or is this really just kind of an inside the Beltway battle?
Yeah, John, I think you got it. I think it's inside the Beltway. I think, you know, Democrats are taking a calculated risk here. They keep talking about polls regarding people wanting to see, you know, spending and infrastructure and all of that. And they're going to, look, you can spin any poll you want. The question then becomes, you know, how much will this come back to haunt Democrats if they go it alone? Remember, they went budget reconciliation. They went it alone on the COVID stimulus bill. If they go it alone again on this one, I mean, once again, it plays to a Republican narrative. This is just more spending, more big government. Democrats are going to say, well, the polling is on our side. I'm not convinced that the polling is on their side. And if Republicans spin it the other way, I'm not convinced that the Republicans have the polling right either. I think we're going to have to wait and see on that.
Yeah. Inflation, too, of course, playing into all of this. David, so if Democrats do go it alone, who are some of the key players the president is going to have to win over in his own party?
Well, within his own party, it always comes down to, let's all say it together, shall we? Joe Manchin. We know this. You know what? I love that name. Well, I don't know if I love that name, but I keep saying that name, so I've got to love it a lot. So you got Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema. Those are the two big ones. On the Republican side, if there's going to be any deal to be had, keep your eye out, obviously, on Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, maybe even Rob Portman, but most likely Romney, Murkowski, and Collins. If they start moving, then there could be a deal.
All right, so right now it looks like it's a waiting game. We'll have to wait and see. CBN's David Brody, thank you so much for your insights. We always appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
You bet, guys.
Well, using food as medicine. Up next, how one change to your diet could add years to your life.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life, life to the fullest. Life in your family, life in your finances, life in your body, mind, and spirit, life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, if you haven't already, you might think about budgeting more for groceries. Food inflation is on the rise. A new Morning Consult survey shows 1 in 3 adults say they're paying more for groceries than they were at the start of the year. A majority of shoppers say red meat seems to be costing them more now, followed by chicken. According to Bloomberg, one reason is continuing high demand for at-home cooking. In an effort to save money on their grocery bills, a quarter of shoppers say they are cutting back overall, including eating less meat.
And Jenna, the high cost of beef and chicken might just push some people to explore other options like a plant-based diet.
And not only could it save you some money, but as CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson reports, it could also help save you from some life-threatening health issues.
As a young boy, Michael Greger saw how food can be medicine. His 65-year-old grandmother faced death from heart disease. Then she adopted a plant-based diet and lived to age 96. Now, as a physician, Dr. Greger cites numerous studies that back up his grandma's choice for helping others fight America's #1 killer.
Not only can heart disease be prevented and arrested with a plant-based diet, it's the only diet ever proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery.
Every 37 seconds, someone in America dies from heart disease. Cardiologists like Dr. Deepak Talreja urge their patients to make changes before it's too late.
And we try to push people towards as optimal a diet as they can really stick with.
In short, he recommends eating more plants, fewer animals.
Some people are very committed and they'll fall into a program where they do 100% the right thing. Some people can't do that, but if they can do the right thing 70 or 80% of the time, that moves them closer to getting where they're either going to get more committed or at least get some benefits from that diet.
And it's not just heart disease. Studies show a plant-based diet can prevent other leading causes of death, including cancer. Case in point, Loma Linda, California, the American city with the most centenarians per capita. Also home to the highest concentration of Seventh-day Adventists, a denomination which advocates a plant-based diet.
Adventists have approximately the same proportion of people who die of cancer, heart disease, or stroke, but the age that they get diagnosed is much later.
As the name suggests, a plant-based diet contains mostly foods that grow from the ground. Also, whole foods, ones that are as close to their original state as possible. Plant-based diets offer varying options. Vegan is 100% plant food. Vegetarian includes eggs and dairy. And for those who just can't do without, pescatarian allows seafood. And you may have never heard of flexitarian, but it includes some meat and poultry. For the last 15 years, dietitian Juliana Hever has been teaching people how to switch to a more plant-based diet, which she says can reverse type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure.
It reduces obesity and extra weight. It reduces medication requirements. I love to say that decreasing your medication results are normal. My clients get off their medications.
She admits there's a learning curve.
I liken it to learning a new language. You know, anything when you're transitioning something major, like the way you've eaten your whole life, you just have to learn a few new words, a few new ingredients, tie them together in some sentences and paragraphs and some recipes. And then if you keep doing it over and over again, you become fluent.
Dr. Greger says if he can get his patients to try it for 3 weeks, they're usually hooked.
They're going to sleep so much better. Their digestion's better. Their period's less painful. They have more energy. But in fact, some people say, you know, oh, I felt fine, doc, but then I didn't realize I had chronic indigestion. Like, I just thought it was normal to feel like this after a meal. But no, you don't know how good you're going to feel until you give it a try.
Dr. Greger recommends consuming certain plant-based foods and beverages each day, like berries, leafy greens, legumes, a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, a quarter teaspoon of turmeric, mushrooms, green tea, and more. So while many of us enjoy eating the old standards, increasing evidence shows a healthier and wiser choice involves eating more unprocessed foods from the ground up. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Great info, Lori. Thank you. Hurricane season hasn't officially begun, but we can already cross one name off the list. What that means for the season ahead when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Finally tonight, the Atlantic hurricane season technically doesn't start for another week. But apparently Ana didn't get the memo.
The storm began brewing early over the weekend, becoming a tropical storm on Sunday. This marks the 7th straight year a named storm has formed before the season even starts. And it didn't last long. The storm has already been downgraded. But the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is predicting another active season along the East Coast. Jenna, get this, forecasting between 13 to 20 named storms.
All right, looks like a big year ahead.
Let's hope that maybe it dies down.
Absolutely. All right, thank you so much for joining us.
We hope to see you again tomorrow.